Our next speaker is going to be Kevin Taylor, and he's going to be talking about transmedia environmental development. And a little bit about Kevin Taylor. He's an assistant professor, and he is yes, an assistant professor currently about computer animation and game development program in California State University. He's a veteran video games artist who's created work for publishers such as Bethesda, Softworks, SEGA, Activision, Konami, Ubisoft. Name which one I haven't yet. He probably has worked there. His research interests include augmented reality, 2D and 3D animation, and comic book development. So please give us a warm welcome for Kevin Taylor.
Hello and welcome. I'd like to thank you all for your interest in my presentation and for finding the time to attend. I hope to make this presentation accessible to individuals of all skill levels while still touching on some of the more interesting fringe areas of development. Let me provide a little context by giving you insight into some of my experience, which does extend beyond creating self-promoting themed videos. I got my degrees in game production and virtual reality design with animation in the UK before working as a game tester, lecturer, then a 3D artist for Rebellion Games. At Rebellion, I advanced to level lead, working for a range of publishers on some high-profile franchises such as Call of Duty, Driver, and Aliens vs Predator. Leaving the industry, I moved into education, working with universities in the UK, Australia, and for these last 7 years in the US. I am currently a professor of computer animation and game development at California State University, and I'm engaging in my PhD in transmedia narrative development, which will utilize many of the tools mentioned here and more for the creation of unique, connected narrative experiences. This presentation will be broken down into the following sections, establishing important elements in the creative process before moving into environmental modularity and transmedia toolsets. We will bring the presentation to a close by exploring the direction that current research and development anticipates these concepts to evolve for future interactive entertainment products. Whether it's a medieval tale of unrequited love or an android's lust for revenge in the year 3000, all stories are essentially about the human condition. Since stories were created and recorded, they detailed the trials and tribulations of humanity and were used to bring meaning to the greatest questions of life and existence in a world full of unknowns. These stories can be found in desperate civilizations that have no connections. Deemed integral to the functioning of humanity, they were later coined as the monomyth, the narrative at the core of the human condition. Carl Jung devised a system of archetypes, roles that individuals play, that were repackaged into more novelized roles by Joseph Campbell. These were then rewritten for palatability by Christopher Vogler, who devised the 12 steps of the hero's journey. These structures, and those they inspired, have been foundational in storytelling ever since, and I recommend anyone with an interest pick up Vogler's book, The Hero's Journey. There are different approaches to the realization of a story world. Fantastical worlds require more in-depth explanations of their uniqueness, and a balance between fiction and modern understanding should be carefully struck to ensure any roadblocks to enjoying the narrative are as shallow as possible. The first of two major approaches is Tolkien's bottom-up technique. Here, the world builder develops a deeply realistic world with layers of society, culture, history, and geography to map a world's progression, complete with their cultural evolutions and unique idiosyncrasies and colloquialisms that lead to subtle narrative gold. The opposite would be the top-down technique, utilized by George R. Martin, that sees illusionary walls of depth created around the story's path, suggesting a more fleshed-out world than that which is seen. While both means of world development have merit, the top-down technique is one employed in the creation of immersive worlds, with walls required to see the facade of depth maintained. Interactivity has allowed for new levels of narrative investment in the ability to steer a story and to be involved in the actions and fates of its characters. The lack of linearity acting not as a means to cover an underdeveloped story, but to create many lines of functional, linear paths of narrative that maintain their consistency in whichever direction the story flows. This cannot be achieved without a strong knowledge of traditional storytelling principles. This process requires a strong understanding of the world and its characters, utilizing the different states of interactive decisions like contained, branching, accumulative, and others to allow a mapping of these paths to formulate the illusion of freedom within the actually tight confines of the design. In this way, the user is drawn into the story, their investment deepening as they progress into the illusion. An environmental artist needs to be aware of the desired emotional state of the user at any given time within an area. And this level of connectivity stems from weeklies or weekly discussions that many studios engage in to develop their communication on a project. Within a well-crafted story, these layers of action and reaction lead to compelling play, which can grow with the weight of their decisions through narrative dilemmas. Such actions create a plethora of potential outcomes. Behind the scenes, relationships can be measured by points ascribed to each character, with decisions you make affecting the moral alignment of your avatar, which in turn can affect the opinions of those around you, or even the world at large. Within gameplay, this can lead to unique interactions or areas of play that create a strong sense of reward in the feedback of your decisions. Fantastical scenarios or dire circumstances allow for narrative to explore the extreme range of decision making beyond the everyday, and to push our analysis of decisions and consequences. When well employed, this decision making process can provide true moral conundrums, with a positive and negative side to each action and reaction, played out over a number of in-game hours. These situations are given gravitas not by the system, but by the humanity of the characters and our connection to them. An understanding of what affects the player's psychology, creating contained decisions, and crafting memorable conundrums such as charity or wealth, love or success, are vital to ensuring the best possible sense of non-linear immersion is created without endless paths of decision checks and balances. The more decisions, the more production is required. Better games allow the spectrum of decisions to go beyond good and evil. Actions can be counted in the background to ensure unbiased decision making based on the user's gut judgment, as opposed to when a user picks a theme of play and sticks to its color and alignment path, removing themselves from the moral decision making process. How are these concepts utilized in environmental art? I worked as a level lead artist, which means the creation of spaces and collections of spaces through which the user would move to achieve their goals. The goals of the environment were based on a number of factors: to create a specific emotion such as fear, tension, or calm, to support the gameplay goals of the space, to move a user through an area, or to direct attention to achieve specific narrative goals within an area. This was done through 3D production of models, the creation of texture sets, and the utilization of lighting and atmospheric VFX. To create a space with fidelity, an artist must understand its truth and the journey the space has been on through its history. This is best understood through a range of common questions, such as what was the space built for, what was it used for, and how was it maintained. This helps us understand the bones of the structure, but beyond the construction itself, the human factor must be considered when creating a simulated sense of life within a virtual space. This sense of occupancy requires a solid knowledge of aesthetic narrative and character development, as people are naturally attuned to detect and respond to visual cues as a means of understanding their surroundings. Every day we make design decisions about factors we wish to convey to others and ourselves. A projection of an aspect of our interests or character, with our aesthetic impacting how we are perceived based on the conceptions of others. If I were to turn up at your home, which would be a surprise, I know, then I would see a projection of the history of the people who had lived there, single or with family, pets. What are your interests and hobbies? Is the space cluttered or Spartan? The design of our personal space displays a fascinating visual narrative that speaks clearly to the individual and their character. An environmental artist has to be able to create and tell tales of those people who have inhabited the space and leave the impression of life upon it without missing a beat. The artist must understand the story of the space, and this projection of life can often cross into what's known as micro-stories. These micro-stories consist of different objects arranged so as to suggest a small, unique story of the location or its inhabitants. Game types now allowing for users to explore an increasing amount of side areas, with the potential for these micro-stories detailing these makeshift characters seeing a new high of implementation within interactive environments. These tales, often conveyed through purely visual means, can span multiple locations, charting the journeys of different characters and spaces. It is not uncommon for players to add to these stories, conjuring their own extended narratives based on these arrangements in a theatre of the mind, best achieved with narrative conveyance that still leaves room for the imagination. While the subtle nature of these arrangements can go consciously unnoticed by the users, they always add to the subconscious sense of life that is felt in the different game spaces as a part of the sensory whole. An artistic eye, an understanding of the world around us, is vital to creating a virtual world with a sense of fidelity. An understanding of the tools that they will utilize in a technical production follows, but without a physical understanding of the world, the technical aspects are rudderless, and we'll see time wasted in a drawn-out, iterative process of production rather than a more concise process. For example, the addition of a body of water to a space brings growth such as moss or mold to the surrounding area, but also moisture, which will be seen across the different materials in the area, which will be slick and shine under the light. Material setups that utilize a range of textures to achieve realistic effects are known as physically based rendering materials, or PBRs. Here, artists manage real-world attributes through textures and parameters, often with the assistance of procedural tools such as algorithmic substance softwares. The final results are able to recreate different real-world properties for a consistent aesthetic. Let's move on to modularity. Any of you who consider themselves gamers will be aware of the technological advancements that occur year by year in the industry. Many of these are aesthetic, as companies strive to provide the most compelling and oftentimes realistic visual experiences within games that can be packaged into the current generation of console and PC title. This expectation for visual advancement in new releases is ceaseless, but is also accompanied by the user's desire for larger, more immersive environments, facilitating an increase in user freedom of play. These creative goals are supported by a variety of technical production processes. As an environmental lead, I would train new hires in some of these, such as modular environmental construction. These are sections of environmental set pieces that act like Lego blocks, but on a more intricate scale. The mat to which these sections seamlessly interact is known as the footprint. On screen, you can see an example of low geometry set pieces being utilized to construct a larger structure with modularity. Game development houses tend to favor the creation of proprietary video game engines, programmed from the ground up by an in-house team. This approach leads to developers in a constant state of hustle to ensure their engine remains competitive with the functionality of other commercial engines. The benefit is the flexibility that it allows for the tailoring of tools to directly suit the needs of a project. This often leads to conceptual innovations that are copied and rolled out later by other consumer engines. Such tools have improved the ease with which modular environments have been created, with ongoing work to see the process further streamlined, making modular utilization an increasingly accessible system for designers, as well as for the artists who construct them. Modular elements can be seen here, manipulated in real time, extended and expanded freely in all directions. These tools, seen utilizing modular elements built to the footprint, can be utilized to work beyond the mathematical borders of the footprint, creating shapes and forms on a purely creative, aesthetic basis. In this way, modular systems are moving towards the liberation of their application beyond the innate confines of the process. The arrival of procedural environmental production has made modularity a common aspect of the technical groundwork, allowing tools to understand where and how to form the environment based on these sections. This approach sees the artist develop a generic environmental structure, to which the software is applied via a visual node set. Here we see subgranular modular geometry, so geometry that is comprised of smaller elements that must work together to build one complete modular section. Once loaded into the chosen software, the engine procedurally generates these modular elements to the environment node structure, creating a completed modular environmental set. This set can then be cycled with a random seed generator, which reorganizes the content within the nodes, providing a high level of diversity to the environment. Procedural environments are primarily aimed at video game environments, seen on screen or in VR. Moving beyond standard procedural generation, the prototype technology Promethean AI sees the user verbally engaging with the AI in construction of virtual spaces. Asset libraries still require production and categorization, but the ease with which new spaces can be created is staggering. Easy customization, asset placement, and general usability make this an attractive prospect for teams developing multiple spaces with a set amount of assets. This is one of the many ways AI is set to revolutionize the interactive entertainment industry, and I, for one, am ecstatic. Teams have been working to develop AI that will do an increasing amount of heavy lifting in virtual spaces. Utilizing deep networks over video rendering, this AI is able to create fantastic representations of a fictional city based on simple video footage. With direction, the AI separated out structures, vehicles, and people, and created a simulation of a virtual world. Used in tandem with the Unreal Engine 4, users were able to interact with these virtual spaces in real time. The increasing functionality of AI to develop new content opens up exciting future possibilities for development teams, with each advance allowing for a smaller and smaller team to develop the games that they most desire. Now, let's move on to the recession-proof, pandemic-proof field of video game development. Games remain at the fore of user-centric technological innovation due to its ability to immediately monetize early-stage, buggy technology. You would immediately return a microwave if it didn't work right, but a video game or peripheral hardware? You turn it off and on again and just keep playing, even if it makes you nauseous and ill, as has been the case with VR. More and more people are engaging with games, with numbers increasing at a startling rate each year. Though the term games and play elicit ideas of children and idle enjoyment, games now represent a significantly different demographic. Made up of mostly adult gamers, the themes and experiences of games is as varied as that of cinema and TV. A game engine is just a real-time interactive engine and can be used for any experience that you can imagine. Real-time engines are changing the competitive landscape across the realms of architectural visualization, production design, engineering, industrial design, and other creative industries. Faster iteration speeds and greater design flexibility is putting early adopters of real-time technologies at a major cost advantage over artists who stick with traditional techniques for asset development. Offline rendering takes significantly longer to produce the same quality of work, meaning that wasted time could have been better spent improving the end result. The Star Wars developers worked within their space battle scenes to find the best angles for their shots, saved and referenced by an observing team tech. This allowed them to focus their work within their compositions to provide the most dynamic shots possible for the most heart-pounding and engaging results. When developing a game, designers decide upon the fundamental aspects of interaction, devising the themes of play, and creating a timeline of pacing and emotional goals throughout the journey of play. A game may be designed to elicit apprehension, fear and fright, disgust, or even positive emotional results. While good graphics and VR can further these goals, the design of the story and interaction that drives the experience is always key. If a character is set to feel fearful and on edge, then the audio and visual elements must say this, but further still, this must happen in the design of play, depriving a user of resources or creating a situation where harm feels imminent. This high anxiety must be relieved in order to be experienced again anew, so providing resources or a safe room can deliver respite to be stolen away anew in future encounters. Tailored gameplay, an interesting narrative mystery, and some vibrant characters and scenarios led Resident Evil 7, which is considered the flagship of the PSVR, to its success. With Resident Evil 8 set to hit the market soon, I encourage you to explore this sensory experience before it becomes too dated. Immersive films have grown from strength to strength over these past few years, starting with early scenes like the fantastic little film Henry, where you attend a cartoon hedgehog's birthday, to more mature features such as documentaries, films, and animations. A desire to utilize the tools has given way to a desire to tell specific stories with the tools, with high-fidelity products providing captivating experiences in a variety of styles. VR painting has been around for quite a while, with software like Tilt Brush allowing an artist to stand within their canvas while creating 2.5D paintings. With applications like Quill, the process has developed into the ability to animate in VR, with content created, modified, and animated completely within the virtual reality headset. It utilizes a 2D approach to 3D animation with bountiful potential for unique virtual storytelling. Much like the Star Wars team choosing compositions within their space battles, developers standing within their virtual spaces can open up new, creative avenues and perspectives for the storyteller, with some amazing results already being seen. Discussions around VR filmmaking include the fact that you can't present a specific story to a user unless you're going against the immersive nature of the media itself. So a true VR film should be considered an experience that the user has engaged with. Perhaps they caught the main aspect of the story, or some aspect of the story, or none of the story. It's really up to them. But calling it an experience means that it's okay if they don't receive an exact engagement with the piece, as this isn't a widescreen cinematic experience where that degree of experiential direction is expected. Embracing this concept should lead to an increasing amount of activity within VR experiences. Realizing the potential of the medium, which could lead to water cooler moments where users share their specific experiences to develop a collective narrative. This degree of VR fidelity will lead to increasingly open worlds, with more developers creating content around the user as pockets of experience in the crafting of their story. Let's finish up by looking at augmented reality. As a transmedia artist, I've experimented with AR development in advance of more significant study for my ongoing PhD research. AR will remain, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, in what could be called its awkward phase, while the technology and AI catch up with consumer expectation. Image recognition and AI are the bottlenecks, as a current system struggles to understand and interpret the world of the viewer through all angles and lighting variations without visual dropout. This goal is reliant not only on the development of AR AI, but on the advancement of other fields parallel to augmented reality. Two such areas are virtual computing and the dream of a consistent, high-speed internet. Virtual computing sees all processes taking place in another location, leaving a relatively unintrusive interface to receive and utilize the processing power streamed right to your eyes. As someone who's been wearing glasses most of his life, I feel I am ready for a fully augmented future with my headset. Other technologies are bearing fruit in AR contact lenses, in what's become known as invisible computing, with hand gestures guiding the interactions. Various companies are already working to bring AR to the consumer to spearhead this revolution of innovative function. It took VR a number of years to achieve its current state of stability, and while there is some synchronicity between the advancement of VR and AR, there are clear issues that are specific to AR that need to be overcome to advance its success. Issues include the expense of some kits for development, the infancy of the tool sets and technology, and the actual physical size of some of these AR headsets. More important here than in VR, as the real-world location is directly relevant to the AR experience. Zuckerberg and the Oculus team are developing augmented reality to follow the smartphone development and release model. Like others, they foresee the technology having a profound impact on the world. Much like the smartphone revolution, it is anticipated that AR will fundamentally change the way we receive and interact with information and each other, bringing communication straight to the eyes, managed through motion, verbal cues, and microcontrollers. Augmented reality can, even at this juncture, create fully immersive experiences before the eyes of the user. These spaces have been different planetary surfaces, jungles and mountain vistas, and have captured the imaginations of technologists about the future that they will one day create. But the potential for this interactivity as a means of reshaping the world in real time is staggering in scope. New tools will continue to change the way artists will create their experiences, providing AI support or innovative interfaces to realize deeper visions of engagement and storytelling. Whatever technologies may come, the core of the creator's goal remains the same. Animations and stories are all expressions of an artist's desire to communicate something to the world, to create an experience that users passively or actively engage with, that will take them on a journey into your own unique world, down the rabbit hole of the human condition. Whatever comes next, it will be a long time before the artist is removed from the driver's seat of these experiences, but they have to remain open and engage with the future that is fast approaching. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time. I would now like to open the forum to questions.
All right, it looks like we have audio now.
Brilliant.
And
Great news.
I do apologize. Okay, we'll start with the first question again, which was about the software used for the modularity example.
Okay, sure. So the software that I think from the video that I think you're kind of talking about, that is a it's actually an in-house set of tools. It's a some procedurally generated tools there, spline-based modular environmental editing. So the actual modular construction will be the same, but the in-house tools that were developed by the in-house programmers for that games company, they actually manipulate them with splines. So that's kind of what you see in there, spline-based procedural environmental generation. So while I'm not sure that that's readily available in UE4, I'm not 100% sure on that at the moment because those videos were taken over a year ago. These companies tend to catch up pretty quick. Epic is a fantastic company for that. So I would do some Googling for procedural modular environmental generation with splines and see what you can find, because it may be that plugins or those tools are available out there somewhere.
All right, and then the next question was about your project and where you'd like to continue with.
So I think I'm going to be spending the next 4 years working pretty intensely on my PhD. I started my literary review in January. So I'm starting to experiment now with some of the tools that you've seen there and some others. But I'm going to be developing a unique narrative that is going to be explored through a range of different mediums. And that's going to be where the transmedia aspect comes in. So I'm going to be working on developing illustrations and sequential mediums such as comic books and that kind of thing, which is going to work in tandem with applications that I'm working on that will be utilized on your tablets and your phones. And through that, you're going to be able to access different aspects of the story and different narratives that kind of expand upon the physical production with 2D animations, hand-drawn 2D animations, AI-assisted 2D animations, and then some 3D animations as well. And then that is going to be added to with an interactive product that I'm going to be developing, probably utilizing Unreal Engine 4, where you'll then be able to explore beyond what is kind of printed and animated to directly interact with the world of this story. And all of this is kind of going to come together to develop, a narrative experience that will be kind of unique, hopefully unique to the viewer as they kind of bring their own ideas and their own imagination to the information that is going to be presented there.
All right, that sounds great. One last question before we sign you off today. You were showing some examples of like the AI generated worlds and interfaces. How do you think that's going to be received if it actually becomes more popular?
Well, I think it's an inevitability, really, that kind of stuff is going to become more popular. And I think that the first response by some people is, oh my goodness, is this going to take our jobs? Is this going to remove people from this process? But I don't think the expectation for products is going to rest where it currently sits. So games are going to get larger, animations are going to get more in depth. And I think the world of interactivity is going to really benefit from these tools, and that's where they're going to be primarily applied, I think. So the expectation is that we're going to want to maintain the current visual standard, which these tools will kind of help with as we develop these larger and larger worlds. But we're still going to need artists and managers to actually build all of the content that is then going to be utilized within these tools. So these are essentially just going to be additional tools that are going to allow the artist and the game designer to just expand what is seen, expand what is built. Kind of like modularity. So rather than building one building, you build a building set that can be utilized for more. And that's how modern video games, the Fallout games and whatnot, and much more, develop these much larger worlds, and those worlds are just going to get bigger and bigger. So expect your RPG experiences to be even more immersive and time consuming as we develop these more in-depth products utilizing AI with great assistance from the designers and the artists.
All right, thank you again, and we do apologize for the technical issues that we've had today. But thank you again for being a part of CSGC 2021.
No, it was absolutely my pleasure. And if anyone would like to have any additional discussions, please feel free to reach out to me through my email or through LinkedIn. Have a great day, Akram. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, thank you.